the wisdom of generations of women to help you have more joy every day. The Wisdom Coalition program begins right now.
There's tremendous power in positive thinking. And in fact, there's tremendous power in negative thinking as well.
We are fighting constantly with our thoughts in our head. This is one thing in here, and this is one thing in there.
Which voice are you listening to?
Welcome to the Wisdom Coalition program. I'm Nancy Wertine.
And I'm Kim Howie. Thanks for joining us.
We're talking today about a fascinating topic, the power of positive thinking. Is there really power in it?
Absolutely, and there's scientific evidence to prove it.
So we know that it's good to be positive, but life and circumstances can make that not so easy.
Still, some people find a way to be positive even in the worst of times.
And it's those people who are a testament to what positive thinking can do.
In the midst of her second confrontation with breast cancer, Sarah Trimmer found a lifeline. She started a social media campaign called Start and End Happy, despite the physical and mental toll of chemotherapy and 33 rounds of radiation.
When I lost my eyebrows to chemo and was trying to figure out how to draw them back on, I posted it. When I was learning how to position a lace front wig onto my forehead, I posted it. And I started to brand these posts with the hashtag Start and End Happy.
In her recent local TED Talk, Sarah explained how her shift in mindset became her guide and her power, something cancer couldn't take away.
Sarah Trimmer joins us now to talk a little bit more about her journey. Thank you so much for being with us, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Sarah, I loved your TED Talk, and you certainly did have quite a few difficult years. Can you walk us quickly through the timeline?
Sure. So in 2011, I lost my dad very suddenly. He had lung cancer. And then I went through a divorce, and then my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. I actually lost my parents just 54 weeks apart. A few weeks after my mom passed, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then I was diagnosed with breast cancer again. I was able to remarry in that timeline as well. I was hit by a car and had a lot of surgeries and chemotherapy and radiation sprinkled in there as well.
Oh my gosh, so in the midst of all of that, somehow you came up with Start and End Happy, which is incredible. So tell us a little bit about what that is and why you started that.
Well, I think I kind of needed some sort of coping mechanism. My doctors would give me a lot of statistics throughout my diagnosis, and it turned out that every statistic would be like wrong. I wasn't supposed to have cancer a second time, and it came back. So I had to develop another method. You know, relying on statistics for ease of mind wasn't working. So I started just kind of reciting 5 phrases in the morning and at night and completing them, and I found that it brought me a lot of joy. It brought me a lot of something to focus on every day, and it just, in finding that it helped me, I thought, you know, this could really help other people with what they're going through.
That's wonderful. And you know, research shows that our brains are actually hardwired to be negative, and this is why we tend to ruminate on negative aspects in life. How did you not do that?
I definitely think that's true, by the way. Being positive is a learned behavior. I definitely wasn't always positive. And given everything that life kind of threw at me, it was hard to remain that way. So kind of training my brain to focus on positive things at the start and the end of every day is what really helped me break out of that negative mindset.
And so the 5 steps, the 5 phrases that you start and end each day with, what are those?
The 5 phrases that I recite every day and complete are: today I learned, tomorrow I will, something that made me happy today, today I helped someone by, and today I am grateful for.
So every day you fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And are some days it's kind of challenging to fill in those blanks?
Yes, it really is. Some days you definitely have to search for those moments, especially when you're doing it twice a day. Someone had asked, well, how do you know that right when you wake up in the morning? But, you know, sometimes it takes me to mid-afternoon to fill them in for the first time. It takes something happening for me to be able to complete them.
Do you write them down every day?
I did at the start. I have a lot of journals filled with these phrases, but now it's become such a part of my behavior that I don't need to write them anymore. I just kind of recite them in my head and keep them there all day.
Was there ever a time when you sort of the worst time during your battle with cancer where you kind of almost gave up on Start and End Happy, or that you found it the most challenging?
Absolutely. About halfway through my chemo treatment, I had a really rough time with the injections that would boost your white cells. And I was laying on our bathroom floor, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. But my wife was the one who kind of got on the floor with me and said, practice what you preach. What made you happy today? What are you grateful for? And it really, really helped me through that.
Thank you so much for being with us, Sarah. And we will be talking with you again later in the show.
And remember, you can go to our website, thewisdomcoalition.com, and continue the conversation online. We'd love to hear from you.
But first, more reflections on this topic from our Well of Wisdom.
I really believe that when we wake up in the morning, if we decide to expect the best of ourselves, to expect the best of our circumstances around us, the chances are that we'll have a much better day.
Welcome back. Let's talk a little bit more about the science behind positive thinking.
It's called positive psychology, and studies show that people with positive emotions have more energy, get more enjoyment out of life, make healthier choices, have better coping skills, and healthier immune systems.
And even live longer. Our next guest has the distinction of being one of the first 100 people in the world to earn a degree in applied positive psychology. Louis Alloro joins us now. Thank you so much for being with us, Louis. First of all, tell us, what is positive psychology and how can it be helpful to us?
Sure. Positive psychology is the science of human well-being and is a dedicated study that researchers are looking into what are the qualities of life that make it worth living. So for so long, researchers were studying deficits and weaknesses and how to fix what's wrong with people. And my mentor, Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, was one of the first to stand up and say, hey guys, you know, maybe one of the reasons why so many people are identifying with depression or anxiety might be because we have so many ways to describe it and classify it. And what if we looked at strengths as much as we look at weaknesses, so that people can learn to identify what's right with them and not just what's wrong?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, and at the Wisdom Coalition, we talk a lot about reframing our thinking, you know, simply flipping things like I have to I get to, you know, to have the benefits behind that. So, for example, rather than saying, you know, I have to take my children to their activities, say I get to take my children to their activities. Can you share with us some other tips that you can think of to help people who are looking to get started in positive thinking?
Sure. I mean, that's a great one. And I think that it's not just about positive thinking, although positive thinking is a big part of it. We say that it's more about flexible thinking than it is all about positive thinking, so that we can be curious, that our thoughts might be biased. In fact, they often are. And so when we're more mindful, and when we develop a mindfulness practice, we can have a greater distance between what's happening and then how we're thinking about what's happening, so that in that space, in that, we call it a metacognition, you have more power, because you see that how we're thinking is often inaccurate, biased with negativity and lots of other things. So other strategies for people is just to be open to a practice of mindfulness, so that they can develop more of this space between stimulus and response. I heard you speaking earlier about the gratitude practice and how important that is to recognize what's going right. Often we go to bed at night thinking, I didn't get enough done today, and we wake up in the morning thinking, I didn't get enough sleep last night. And the rest of the day is often filled with those negative and often very scarce kind of thoughts. And so when we develop a gratitude practice, we begin to see more of what's working and more of what's right. And the more times we can identify what's working, we end up seeing more of that in our lives.
And so if we're focusing more on positive things, can we get better at it the more we do it, sort of hunt, you know, training our brains to sort of hunt for the good stuff? Oh,
yeah. I mean, we in that training, we develop new neural networks so that our default mode, our default position can be shifted from what's wrong to what's right. And we end up seeing more of that, literally. And in some studies with fMRI brain scans, they show that people who develop positive emotion like gratitude intentionally and regularly end up increasing their field of vision. So negative thinking and narrows us, and positive thinking broadens us. So with a developed practice, a set of skills, we can learn to see things differently.
All right, thank you so much for being with us, Louis. And Sarah will be joining us in a few moments to continue our conversation.
But first, some more reflections on this topic from our Well of Wisdom.
See that many people have negative talk in their head, and they can't stop that.
You have to just embrace where you are and what you have in your life and be thankful for what you have.
Welcome back. One thing we want to point out is that this concept of positive thinking applies to everyone, because we all have things that don't go as planned in our lives.
We sure do, and it's easy to get negative. In fact, studies show that women's average self-reported happiness has fallen steadily since 1972. Interesting statistic there. Both of our guests join us now. And Louis, why do you think that is? Why do you think that women's self-reported happiness has fallen steadily since 1972?
Good question. I mean, so many variables, right? So with social science, it's so hard to say, you know, these are the reasons why. But you could think about the demands of modern life are greater than ever before. Social comparison is something that affects women and men. So we're constantly doing this game in our head of, you know, us versus them. And so many reasons why that could possibly be. I think a greater question is probably, how can that change? You know, how can we help women and intervene so that we have more people on the upswing? So we have more than ever before. Research shows that too. Why aren't we happier? And so if you think of happiness not just as something you have or you don't, that you're born with, but something that you develop, I think that that's really where the work lies.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, studies show that there's a measurable link between social support and well-being, especially for women. Sarah, did you find that to be true for you?
Absolutely. When you're diagnosed with cancer, you have to immediately develop who your tribe is going to be. And I would not have made it through everything that I went through without my circle of friends. You know, was it to be there to let the dogs out, or to bring me, you know, some food when I needed it, or was it just for the emotional support? I relied heavily on them for sure.
And you know, we talked about a couple of techniques, Louis, you did, techniques to change the way that we think about our circumstances. But I would think that being positive has a lot to do with changing the way we think about ourselves also. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, in that self-awareness, there's so much power, because we're our worst critics ultimately, which is why social support is so important. And to have, I would say, even before the crisis emerges, is to make sure that your network is there, and that you are an active participant in it, and that you are, you know, exchanging energy with that group, so that, you know, you're giving and you're receiving, and it takes a village. And so we need each other is really the bottom line with my field of positive psychology, is that other people matter, and that we need to look out for the well-being of others. When we look out for the well-being of others, it means we're taking best care of ourselves.
Yeah, well, and I'm currently studying towards my master's degree in positive psychology, and I've learned so many wonderful techniques, but one of my favorites is disputing, and especially when it comes to that negative self-talk. I like to call that stinking thinking. You know, how can you talk a little bit about that and how you see that playing out, disputing?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, a set of skills that we don't have time to go through now, but many of them come from cognitive behavioral therapy and fields like that, where you start to think about how you think. And so when you start to see yourself from that lens, you start to see a litany of thoughts that are unhelpful usually. So we can interrupt ourselves with phrases like, well, that's not true because, or another way to look at that is. And so in that space, we're actually learning to rewire. We're laying new neural networks down, so that in the heat of the moment, when the adversity does strike, we can be our best selves, our most powerful selves.
And that almost seems like what you sort of just did naturally with Start and End Happy. I mean, you're not a trained person in positive psychology, but you somehow intuitively knew to go for these 5 steps. Did you notice that that was, continuously, consistently helping you to feel better? And do you still do it today?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize that anyone who develops a process for them to manage feelings is not a replacement for those feelings. People have asked me, well, don't you ever get angry or sad anymore? I'm like, yes, I'm not a robot. I'm still human. This is a way that I've figured out how to cope with those feelings, not replace them.
And that's a great point, because even when you've talked about it, people have always said, well, I can't be happy all the time, but that's not what we're talking about.
Nor should you be, right? And even if you were happy all the time, you wouldn't know what that felt like anymore, because life is lived in this contrast. So life is about a full range of human emotions. You need sadness, you need anger, you want sadness, you want anger, but just because you have those emotions doesn't mean you need to live there. It also allows you to have the magnitude of the positive emotion to match it.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you, for being with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And positive thinking really is at the heart of a lot of what we do at the Wisdom Coalition, especially thinking positively about ourselves.
And at some of our events, we used a worksheet that you can get at our website, thewisdomcoalition.com. Helps you to focus on your own positive qualities. We'll be back in just a moment.
I think for me it's also important to surround myself with good people, people who are supportive, people who are encouraging, people who are positive and who don't just want to be negative all the time.
I've used my 2 hands to myself, saying, well, this has happened, this is not good, but on the other hand, I'm still here and I can see another path that will take me to a better place.
Welcome back. It's certainly easier to be positive if we feel well and are healthy.
Absolutely. And studies show there's a link between what we eat and how we think and feel.
Yeah, and what could be healthier than a backyard garden? Our next guest is here to talk about that, Tim Delaney from Full Circle Edible Landscaping. And Tim, I just love this idea. So you set people up with their own backyard gardens, right?
Yes.
And even maintain them for them.
Yep.
Which is the hardest part of the backyard garden, isn't it?
That's not too hard.
Easy for you to say.
So what are you going to show us today?
Just a simple way to plant lettuce. I mean, a lot of people are planting flowers now, and why not eat what you plant?
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
That sounds great.
And let's start with the seeds, because I sometimes, to be honest, I kind of mess up with the seeds a lot of times. I put too many or too few.
How far apart?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty simple with the lettuce seeds. I get a good quality seed, mine from High Mowing. It's a Yankee lettuce mix. And it's pretty simple. All you have to do is just cut a little line where you want your lettuce. Simple. And then sprinkle it in.
Really? So you
Just
don't
like
have
that.
to worry about how far apart they are. You
No,
just sprinkle.
just sprinkle it in and then give it a little scratch like that over. Just like grass seed.
Okay, I have to tell you, I planted some kale in my backyard. What you did took me about a half hour.
No, you can do that in 2
counting
seconds.
each
There you
one
go.
out.
I was just thinking you made that
Easy.
look so
Done.
easy. And not too deep. You didn't go too deep.
Not too deep, just like grass seed. All you do is sprinkle it on the top and just give it a little cover and then water it.
All right, perfect. So now tell us what this next.
Now, this would be about 20 days. I planted this outside on the 4th, and that's about 20 days. So after this, you get about 20 days, you get this, and this is, you can have baby lettuce.
That's quick, 20 days.
And the way you would deal with this is you would just thin it out. So you would want to pick like a seedling here, and then just pull all these guys out, real nice and gentle, and then you get the roots and everything there.
Oh, you take the roots and everything?
Right, roots and everything, and then you can just clip it, and then throw it in your salad bowl.
Oh, wow, talk about fresh.
Yeah, so then you keep that seedling and that one will grow up to be big, and then take another seedling. Give about maybe 5 inches in between them all. And then just pull it out, a little nice and gentle. Try not to disturb the other roots that are there. And then you just keep going like that. You can go along, and then eventually you get to
And so
those.
let's switch that out. So the point of thinning it is so that you're getting to this part, correct?
Right, then you can get baby lettuce while you watch the other ones grow. So you get like you get to eat the whole time.
Yeah.
And then once you have these, you let them thin out to about this, and then you can just pick the outer leaves on these and harvest it like that.
Oh, that's great.
Or,
do you use fertilizer on this?
No, this is just compost. Yeah, this doesn't really demand that much of the soil, so There's a nice little compost or the dirt in your backyard would just grow it easy.
Yeah, and you can grow them in containers like this.
Yeah, this is the easiest way because you can move it around if you have it on a deck or something like that. But that's just a section out of my yard.
Wow. So you can grow this in containers. I thought you brought this just to show us, but you mean
you can easily just grow it like this, like that. I'll probably go home, water it, and let it come up again.
That's great. And how much water? Because I always tend to overwater.
Well, you would want to leave these drained, so so they can free drain. But you can water them every day, twice a day. It depends if they're getting really hot. Like obviously they're going to dry out a little bit quicker. But
and full sun?
Lettuce will grow in part shade, so you'll be all right. Even on the deck in the shade, you'll be all right. As long as they get a little bit of sun, 4 hours.
Well, and I know, Kim, you're always complaining about deer getting at your garden. So really, to be able to put something on your deck like that is great, because then you can control.
Right, you can move it away from them.
Yeah. Right. And what are these going to become the traditional round lettuce heads that we think of?
Right, well, this is a romaine, so this would come up like this and get about this big. And then when it gets real hot, it'll shoot up a flower stalk, and you can collect those seeds and just do this all over again without having to buy seeds. So once you get this started, you'll always have these seeds, and these seeds, and you can just keep planting them as you want. Never have to buy seeds ever again.
Wow.
Yeah. Easy.
That's genius. Yeah. And how long, you said, I think you said to me just before, you and your wife will eat, how long off of one of these things?
Well, this, I mean, here you could do, I do about 2 big salads, like that bowl, 2 big salads a week. So you could get maybe a week out of this or 2 weeks out of this, but you can get a couple days out of this too as it grows, and as these get bigger you can just harvest it and keep harvesting. So now would be the perfect time to plant these, because when you're harvesting these, you'll have this coming up.
All right, thank you so much for being with us, Tim.
That's great.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, wonderful. And go out and spread some joy today.
Thanks for being with us.